Russia's war in Ukraine has had massive implications in the Horn and Eastern Africa. Humanitarian groups are struggling to help hundreds of thousands of Africans who were already facing food insecurity and are now dealing with a massive deficit in food supplies. Hajir Maalim is the regional director of the Horn and Eastern Africa for Action Against Hunger. He tells VOA Carol Van Dam that 84% of the wheat consumed in Eastern Africa comes from imports, and 90% of that amount comes from Russia and Ukraine.
The wheat demand in these countries actually varies from one country to the other. Some countries like Eritrea 100% rely on wheat produced in that part of the world. Therefore, the inability to be able to provide these products to this region is going to have massive implication on the ability for the household to have access to food down the line. And this situation is even made worse by the currently biting severe drought in the Horn of Africa, where we have already seen in many households where we did our own assessment, Action Against Hunger's own assessment, we found crop production, cereal harvest below 80% what was projected to be harvested this season. Many of the crops have failed, and as a result of that, significant demand on imports to meet the household food needs. What we are seeing already, the compounding effect of the drought, the conflict in this region, and the disruption in supply having massive implication on the nutritional situation of children under 5.
You're saying it's kind of like a 1, 2, and 3 punch with not only the drought in the area of Eastern Africa and the Horn, it's the conflict that is happening in parts of the continent there, and also the war in Ukraine from Russia.
That is correct. I think these communities, vulnerable communities, are facing multiple shocks, one after the other, sometimes multiple hit at the same time. And these are vulnerable people that are dependent on casual labor, barely making a living on the base of this. And we have seen in some areas where we did our assessment, we found more than 26% of the households in those areas even have no income and therefore dependent on food aid. And because of this disruption, we are already seeing significant increase. In Mogadishu, our own assessment clearly shows that the prices of wheat have increased by 50% in the last few months. Similarly, other staple food are also prices of staple food are also increasing. Therefore, this is having massive implication on these communities.
You obviously help people who are the most vulnerable, who can't buy food on their own. But then the people that were going to the market and buying staples for their families, they can't even afford anything anymore, you're saying.
That is correct. Somalia, for instance, have recorded more than 600,000 people have moved because of this increasing vulnerability, compounded by food price increase and the biting drought as well.
Africa had done a good deal of exporting to Russia and Ukraine, too, before the war. What kinds of exports are we talking about, and how have African farmers and traders been affected since February 24th, when Russia invaded Ukraine?
Kenya, for instance, exports tea, flowers, coffee, fruits to Russia at an estimated value of about $87.5 million annually. And because of the suspension to container shipping lines, this has been disrupted. And this export is essential for the survival.
That's Hajir Maalim, Action Against Hunger's Regional Director of the Horn and Eastern Africa. He was speaking with my colleague Carol Van Dam from Nairobi, Kenya.